Kevin, first, do you want to introduce yourself and why you're relevant to talk about experimentation program management?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kevin Anderson. I work at ING, one of the global banks, and I've been at ING for more than 10 years. And well, I think the common thread in my career is helping teams to understand customer behavior, always with data and experiments. So I've been heavily involved in running experiments, but also enabling teams to set those up, mostly on the building part. So really enabling teams to do that, because I'm a strong believer in enabling teams, empowering teams to really understand what customers are doing and continuously experiment with that. And I think this has been practiced in big companies, but we here at ING are also trying to take that into our culture and bring that to all the teams so that they can do it by themselves.
Can you kind of briefly talk about some of the pitfalls in building that dedicated experimentation team? So this is very much people, skills, RASI chart, like who's in charge of what. Do you have any like top list of pitfalls or considerations when building teams?
Yeah, sure. Maybe first, the main question I always get is, so why does a company chooses to build their own experimentation stack? That's always one question I get. And I think if you look at from a broader perspective, if you want to bring experimentation to all the teams, they need to be able to adopt this way of working into their own workflow and work processes. And if you buy a solution off the shelf, they have this all integrated in one solution, but then the teams need to adopt to that way of working, right?
Yeah.
And if you break it down, in essence, an A/B testing tool or experimentation tool is you have something to create a variant, a new experience. You have something to be able to track and target those experiences to specific customers or visitors. Of course, you have the data collection part. You have the experiment management part. You have to do some statistical analysis to make sense of what the results actually mean, and then you need something to actually share the learnings you take from that. And I think it's really logical, if you want to scale this up to tens, hundreds of teams, to see which parts you already have in place in your own organization, and which parts you don't have, and then look for solutions. Some things you might want to buy, and some things it makes really sense to build it yourself. And especially, because we are a bank, so it's we are handling with customers' money, and it's really trustworthy data that we are dealing with. So especially when customers are logged in the mobile app or in the online banking environment, you really want to be sure that everything is fully in control of the teams that are building experiences there. So that was one of the main drivers that we started to develop our own solution. And that started 5 years ago. And I think that this all started with some kind of a side project of one of our architects. So he got a small team together and quickly, I think the key components I just explained, quickly managed to have a very minimal product on those key components. And based on that, we further developed the experimentation stack. And a couple of years ahead now, we are now in the phase of combining all those components now into one actual team. Because what we see is that there's a couple of people working on the integration with analytics. There's a bigger team, but they're also maintaining different APIs to work on the core component. So actually the experiment API that consists of the main product. But there's again another team that is building the dashboard functionality. So it's a bit scattered right now, and then it makes it really hard to focus and build the next step that you really need to take to bring this further.
My second question, it's a little bit of that, a poking question to get more detail. Like, how do you approach that tech stack considering the team structure? And you just mentioned there that the dashboarding or the reporting data visualization team might be different than the I think you said this, maybe the analysis team, the team that's doing some of the data science on the results and the slicing and dicing. And there's difficulties there. So I want to poke on that in particular, because if you think about a lot of the conversations I have are teams building out experimentation centers of excellence, where they are not the executors necessarily, but they are the enablers, and you used that word even earlier. But sometimes it does make sense to have a dedicated data science team doing that. They're the ones, they're not setting up the tests, they're not doing, but they're the slicer and dicers. But sometimes there's a disconnect between the goals of the hypothesis and strategy of a test and how you slice and dice it. So how can you create that center of excellence or a dedicated team to analyze the results, yet stay really close with the business strategy and how that test was kind of constructed from the very beginning, and the goals accordingly?
I think that the first principle here is that each and every team should be able to set up an experiment and analyze it end to end. So that's the main thing here. But maybe the pitfall or the downside of that is that some things you want to involve a data scientist or a data analyst to really deep dive into specific things you are seeing. So we do set up the teams. So some teams have capacity, they have data analysts or data scientists assigned to them, some don't, but many do. And then they have the opportunity to really deep dive into what we are actually seeing. But the system is set up so you can set up an experiment, do a hypothesis. So we try to really teach people how to set up a hypothesis and also track those into the system. Say where you want to experiment, manage your experiment, but also see at least the primary metric in this first dashboard that you are controlling your experiment in. And then all the other data is sent to our analytics solution, also in our data warehouse, of course. So we have all this detailed information available. But at least on a primary metric, you can do your own analysis, and you don't have to be a data analyst for that. You don't have to be a hardcore developer to do that. So it's really set up to enable others to do it by themselves.
Does the platform and the tech stack differ then? You're using a custom tool across all of those budding experimentation teams. Are there any tech stack considerations across the different applications?
Yeah, so we do offer this to two, I think the two group of people you're mentioning here. So for one thing, we have the core development squads or teams.
Yeah.
So they are completely able to take a feature from start to finish. And there we integrate it so they can directly call our experiment API, so they then can target specific features to one group of customers or the other. And of course, therefore, you need to be integrated in the developer maintenance pipeline. But the other way of working is for more like business and online marketers. We integrated with the content management system. So each and every change you can publish to production via our CMS, you're also able to A/B test. And that ensures that everything you're being able to push to production, you're able to experiment. There is one area where we have maybe some troubles, because some areas, some teams don't have front-end capacity, so they don't have front-end developers available, and they do want to make changes because they've noticed something in the data which triggered a specific variant you would like to test.
Yeah.
And there we use a tech stack from just a bought solution where front-end developers can create the variant themselves. So there we make the distinction to explicitly not use the own experiment solution.
Just talk about your approach to continuous experimentation.
Yeah, maybe first define what I mean with continuous experimentation. And I think also when you look at the academic literature on this topic, I think it naturally flows out of the continuous deployment, continuous integration that a lot of development teams are doing, right? So it's not we are building something and we are releasing something every 3 months. And many companies are now in a situation that they are releasing every day or every hour, or so that's the continuous delivery of products, right? And I think when you take that analogy to experimentation, it means that each and every change you're making, you want to make sure that it doesn't hurt your business, and hopefully it improves what you're trying to improve, of course. And if you take that approach, well, that comes back to the integration part. So I strongly believe that you really need to integrate in the workflow of all the colleagues in the company. And maybe the other topic you're talking about, it's maybe a bit about exploitation versus exploration, right? So sometimes you exactly know, okay, this is the area we need to improve, but we're not sure how to do it. And then you want to be exploiting that area as much as possible and try to do as many things. But sometimes you're not even sure if you can choose 10 different things. But what is the area that is probably the most impactful to start working on? And I think that's more the exploration side. And you're right. It really differs from team to team, from time to time, because it depends on the goals that you currently have. But I think it's always a mix of both. I don't think it's always 100% exploitation or 100% exploration. Things change, right? And we're now in the midst of a pandemic, so customer behavior is changing. So that's also a reason to start exploring again. So what has been changed, and what do we need to do to adapt to that?
Yeah, can you dive into a little bit more about your approach, more of the tactical approaches on the continuous experimentation and what you're playing with, maybe use cases or examples?
Um, I think I see it two ways here. So the one way is that we are enabling teams to do experiments for themselves. So each and every feature they can build, they can test. On the other hand, we are integrating with specific personalization spots where for each and every customer there's a different message, but the layout of that is always almost the same, right? So it's only the content that's changing here. So those are totally different ways, right? So one is you can change the whole world, and the other one is no, you have this specific spot where you want to be as personal and relevant as possible for that specific customers who is interacting on a specific time. So here, it's more like all kinds of optimization strategies, and quickly learning if a specific message is resonating or not, and then push it down the ladder again and try and do something else. But the other part is really focusing based on the analytics you have, based on all the knowledge from other research or UX research. What can we build? Then do the test and wait for statistical results, of course, and then work on that for the next feature.